My name is Clifford Akonteh.
Yes, we can, sure we can change the world.
Welcome to the YALI Voices podcast, your home for sharing the best stories from the Young African Leaders Initiative Network. Be sure to subscribe to the YALI Voices podcast and visit yali.state.gov to stay up to date on all things YALI. Our conversation today is with Clifford Akonteh, a Cameroonian lawyer with over 10 years' experience advocating for peace and human rights. Clifford learned about democracy, transparency, and governance at a very young age. The son of a former leader of the National Assembly in Cameroon who was also a proponent of human rights, peace, and democracy across Africa, Clifford knows what it means to work and sacrifice for one's beliefs. Clifford is now the Central Africa Director of the Youth Alliance for Leadership and Development, the National Coordinator for the Movement for Democracy, Development and Transparency, and the founder of Cameroon's Not Too Young to Vote campaign aimed at mobilizing 2 million young voters in the country. As we begin, Clifford shares how he found himself as a lawyer and activist.
I attended the University of Buea, and I actually lived my life all around there till now that I have a family. I actually engaged, first of all, in business, contrary to the views that my parents had for me, because they always wanted me to become a lawyer. But I didn't think it was the right time. And seeing that my father was a political activist and what he had gone through and all of that, I was a little bit annoyed by certain happenings because he got locked up all the time. He was one of those who were fighting for multipartyism in Cameroon through the SDF in the 1990s. He's actually one of the founders and pushers of the SDF. And finally, so I decided to stay away from the law, to stay away from politics for some while. But business wasn't going too well. And unfortunately, it didn't go so well for me at the end of the day because of some given injustices that arose during my employment and certain experiences that really touched my ego and made me to think about the rule of law and think about human rights abuses. And so I saw that my dad was right, and I couldn't run away from what I think was destiny. So I became pushed by that fact to see that there was a need to really fight for marginalized people. There are a lot of people that could be marginalized, that could get dribbled with their salaries and wouldn't know the labor code, wouldn't know how to function in society. And so I got to decide to become a lawyer after practicing for about 3 years. But before that, I had gone to my dad. My dad actually was a former questor of the National Assembly in Cameroon. And he had this NGO, Movement for Democracy, Development and Transparency, but unfortunately got a little bit sick and couldn't continue with it. So I now went to him right before I became a lawyer and told him that it's now time for me to take over this initiative. I think it's fabulous, and I think I'm going to rebrand it because we're not going to concentrate more on older persons. I want to concentrate on the youths. And he was like, son, take it along and do what you want to do with it, and just make sure that the dreams that I had, you can make sure that you achieve them for me. So currently, I represent the Youth Alliance in Central Africa. Youth Alliance actually exists in 40 African universities and about 26 African countries. And it's an initiative that was created by ex-Harvard African students. And we have biennial conferences. I was able to host one in Cameroon in 2016, where I brought over 150 young African leaders from all over the world. Some came from Harvard, some came from Oxford. And then we had the rest from all over Africa, trying to fade the lines between borders. It was about harnessing youth potential across borders. So in political spaces, in economic spaces, in entrepreneurship, and all of that.
Clifford convinced his father to let him take on the Movement for Democracy, Development and Transparency, or MDDT, and rebrand it as a vehicle for engaging with youth and mobilizing young people to peacefully exercise their right to vote. Here he explains why that is so important in the current political climate in Cameroon.
Especially during this Anglophone crisis, we're trying to mobilize young people to still be sane, to be patient, and actually looking for means to get to change mindsets. So the Not Too Young to Vote is actually going to be a journey to 2023 and 2025, where we can use this journey to change the mindsets of young people in Cameroon. The young people in Cameroon distrust the political system, they distrust the electoral system. So we have to undertake this journey to change their mindsets, to refrain from violence and engage in democratic processes to drive change. We also promote peaceful coexistence between both sides, because Anglophones are made up just of 2 regions. They need to work with the Francophones that are made up the 8 regions and coexist, build synergies between them. So the Not Too Young to Vote is geared towards building a platform of more than 2 million young Cameroonians all over the 10 regions of Cameroon, and use this platform to be able to mobilize young people. And that's basically what Not Too Young to Vote is, and we have it very close to our heart. I am actually convinced that it's actually a route to change for Cameroon. It's very difficult at this time because we have to create safe spaces for able to engage young people, or else you wouldn't have young people come out to be able to risk their lives to run for office. But we have to create safe spaces where through these safe spaces we can mobilize. So we are now trying to become innovative. We are trying to brand this project all across Africa. And we are also looking at YALI. YALI is a strength, and we're trying to maximize that strength by trying to brand projects across the continent. The voting age in Cameroon is 20. It's actually 20 years old. And our take, for example, with the research that we have done, is trying to look at the trend of voting over the years. And we discovered that there is a 20% gap between registered voters and actual voters. So we are trying to answer the question, why the 20%? Why the 20%? And through our research on the ground, we have found a couple of reasons. The first reason is about voters' cards that are being piled up at Elekam, and young people don't go to collect them because of change of environment. Probably, for example, in Boya, where I live, people come for university, and maybe elections are coming up, for example, in October, and they had registered, let's say, in June. Let's say in January, their cards come out in June, and they're leaving for their homes. So they abandon their cards. So we are trying to look for strategies to work with Elekam to be able to disseminate these electoral cards. So because there are thousands and thousands of cards piled up in Elekam offices. That is one reason for that gap. Another reason for that gap is that there's lack of awareness. When with the Anglophone crisis, for example, it's obvious that there's going to be a widened gap. It's going to be more than that 20%. I'm pretty sure about that, because of the 200,000 displaced internally, 50,000 in Nigeria and more. And that was like 3 months ago. We don't know the statistics now. So when you displace to the next division or even the next polling station, you cannot vote because your voter's card is tied to one polling station. So you need to understand that if you're going on vacation, if you're going for a weekend, you have to know that you have to plan that beforehand and change your polling station. If you don't change your polling station and you displace yourself, there's no way you can vote. That is just one. And then there's just the other one is just disinterestedness. That is people distrust and they're disinterested in voting. And then you have people also get old and they don't want to move. And since there are no vehicles on that day, and they just can't move, so they stay put. Maybe the polling stations are a little bit far apart, so they really can walk to that polling station. So there are a couple of reasons why we have this gap. But the majority of the reason is that young people are not interested in voting. For the Not Too Young to Vote, which is the main instrument for promoting democracy in Cameroon and engaging young people, we want to see Parliament in 2003 at least. Even if we do worse, we have to see at least 40% of Parliament be youth. And so we have to go to and also make sure that 40% of the mayors after municipal elections are youth. And also we want to see the young people rally together to form their own political party, to have their own political space to interact. Because the representatives of political party for presidential elections, we don't have anyone which is like which is maybe below 40 years. So we want to encourage young people to get that project. So our messaging, like recent messaging, we want to take people like Macron who have made it, and we go back to the past when great presidents took power much younger than those who are going in at 50 years. So we try to message it that way. So that is what the Not Too Young to Vote is trying to do. Also, we also want to change mindsets on violence, because we know that Cameroon is actually a fertile ground for violence in the next future. The early warning signals are very clear on the wall. So there's something that needs to be done. Something needs to be done about electoral violence in Cameroon, especially in the upcoming elections, because the upcoming elections come up just 6 days or 7 days after the separatists and federalists are going to be wanting to celebrate 1st of October, which is like their Independence Day.
Empowering youth and steering them away from violence is a vital mission of Clifford and the Not Too Young to Vote initiative. We asked him how he communicates with youth in his community about participating peacefully in elections and engaging with their government.
It is but right for them to be part of decision making and to create safe spaces that see them as a priority. Because they flood the streets without jobs, you know that there's a call for violence. So you need to make sure that you innovate every day for youths to be engaged. Even if you can offer them jobs, you have to create the safe spaces for them to function easily. And so you have to bring them in to be able to express themselves and their plight. Right from the local level. So it is very important to have the youths nurtured. That is why you have to engage the youths in party politics and democratic processes to be part of the system. You have to nurture the next generation. It is true that maybe some bad practices can be passed over by nurturing, but it is also very important for us to give them the experience that they need, because most often than not, when you're seeking for jobs, the first thing is that they need experience. So if you don't get the youth engaged in decision making, they are not in parliament, they are not in the Senate, because by virtue of age, they are not mayors, they are nothing. How do you groom them? They are not ministers. How do you groom them for the future? It's very difficult. So it is about the youth, and it's about bringing in the youth to safeguard. It is but true that you have to blend energy and wisdom. So you need quite some old brains up there who have had a lot of experience to groom them, but also you need quite a lot of young people in decision making in these places, because they have the energy, and you can groom the energy to the right direction, and that is going to be enabling them to refrain from violence, and those in the communities can easily communicate because communication is a vital issue. So they're not too young to vote, and the messaging, we try to coin it around the harm that violence actually has caused, because there's a lot of harm to families and wounds that have been opened by violence, and the perpetrators of such violence actually are living well. Those that instigate this violence are living well, and even those that you're fighting against, like the government, they're living well. But it's still the poor people dying every day. Those in the bushes are still the poor people. The refugees are still the poor people. And the 1st of October is coming, so you have to give a message that is sensitive to life, and that touches on life, and that to show them how they are risking the life. And they're not risking only their own life, they are risking the life of the poor. And they can die poor without trying to get better. So, that is how we try to coin our messages around. That is why we have a strong message that will say your vote is louder than the gun. So you should concentrate on trying to groom yourselves and form coalitions. We have a strong message that will also tell them that it's not only about the presidency, it is also about your council and your community. You can come up with a good young leader that can take over your council as mayor, and it's going to impact you directly because he has his own budget. he can take care of market needs, he can take care of community needs directly. You don't need the government to do that. All you need is to come together and identify a leader that can do that at the local level. Again, you have a chance to send somebody to parliament. You can send your own. So you have to come together and choose somebody that you want. So the strategy is to encourage trusted youth leaders and encourage them to be able to run for elections so that they can build confidence within their communities. And then it's obvious that time conquers all, time heals. So you also have to know that change does not come in one day. Change is a journey, and that is why we started the Not Too Young to Vote early enough, and then we call it a journey to 2023 and 2025, because we know there's a lot that comes with changing mindsets and convincing young people, and we hope that by that time we're able to have done better messaging and communicated with all the communities, and also to create youth networks in universities, high schools, communities, and human rights organizations and civic education organizations in high schools and in universities, through which they can mobilize themselves and encourage people to refrain from violence and concentrate on voting. So the number of these organizations that we create that are vibrant, also we can also see them as an indicator to change and mobilizing young people to vote. Also, we always work with ELECAM. Elections Cameroon is our partner, because within this last election we actually registered 3,000 young people and in Boya from communities, because universities, only the Boya University has about 35,000, 25 to 35,000 depending on the year. Students, and you can use that arena to get them registered. You can mobilize them. So having those groups, those networks, and that is a lot. That is the Youth Alliance for Leadership is doing a lot of work in that regard, creating networks in universities all across Cameroon. Right now we have 5 branches in Cameroon: University of Boya, University of Bamenda, University of Yaoundé, the Pan-African University, and Cali universities. So we are trying to expand the network so that it can be a center to mobilize. YALI has brought me to a space that has really opened up my mind and actually giving me the courage to go on with this project. YALI is such a blessing, and I have a drive to know that we need to stick together as YALians also to make the change. It's an opportunity for us to make change across borders.
Clifford is committed to bringing more young Cameroonians into the political process. He believes that youth have great ideas and are well positioned to make positive differences in their communities, as long as they reject violence and work to build coalitions committed to free, fair, and peaceful elections. Be sure to come back for more inspiring stories from young African leaders on the YALI Voices podcast. Join the YALI network at yali.state.gov and be a part of something bigger. Our theme music is Ego Happen by Grace Jerry and produced by the Presidential Precinct. The YALI Voices podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Department of State and is part of the Young African Leaders Initiative, which is funded by the U.S. government.